Alright, you're probably here for the helicopter build video. If you want to be entertained, the other video is down below. This video is going to cover the topic of making this Rubberband powered helicopter. Materials. The first thing you're going to need is you're going to need some 3/32 brass tube, some 047 music wire, and some 062 music wire, some 1/16 balsa, SuperGlue, rubber bands, elastic string, 1/4 inch by 3/8 inch stick, some 1/4 inch by 1/8 inch stick. Let's begin the build. Other than the required materials, it's also necessary to download the files. Go to my Thingiverse link down below and download all the parts and go ahead and print them out. For printing, it's pretty easy. You just put everything on the build table. The only part you need to duplicate is just the weight. You need 2 of those. Other than that, the print process is just your standard print should work. It's made out of PLA for my helicopter and roughly 10% infill and all the stuff. Nothing fancy required. And it roughly takes me about an hour to print all these parts. Alright, now that we've printed out the parts, it's time to make the fuselage stick. Grab the 1/4 inch by 1/8 balsa stick, cut it at 14.5 inches. Snap. And we have the boom for the helicopter. Next step. 3/32 brass rod, cut off about 1 inch to 3 1/4 of an inch. The way I'm going to do that, take the knife and just cut it off. Boom, done. Now we're going to take this over here to our helicopter stick. Measure about 1 inch inwards, make a mark with your fingernail or whatever you decide to use. Cut out a little bit of a slot for it. Next stage, take the super glue and glue the little brass piece in so it looks like, Now take some more of this stick, measure about, this is about 2 inches or so. You don't need to be very precise. Cut this off, notch it to fit. Take more of that super glue, take the little notched end and cover this up and slap it down. Next step, cut another piece of brass to about the same dimensions. This one I make just a little bit shorter. This is a 1/2 inch piece. And we're going to take it towards the end of our stick. You can notch it if you want, or just glue it on. I'm going to notch it. Alright, for this one, make sure you put enough glue on it so it stays put, because this is kind of glue on the end. It's not the strongest thing. I like to use a little bit of activator over here to kind of help the glue set up quicker. So here's your completed helicopter rotor mast and tail boom. As you can see, this post here is vertical, and this post over here is horizontal. Alright, for the next step, we're going to need some of the 3D printed parts. So we're going to need this pulley with the holes in it, and the main rotor mast hub. And we're also going to need the 063 piano wire. For the piano wire, you're going to need to cut it at 3.5 inches. So this is our main shaft. Now what we're going to do is put the rubber band hook in there. You're going to grab yourself a pair of pliers. This also requires kind of strong hands as well. I don't know, kids, if you're doing this, maybe get your parents to help you because this is a little tough to bend, if I'm being honest. And you should make it look like that. Next step is to take this and work it into this main pulley. So you're going to want to go and push this through and make sure it fits. Now I confirmed it fits, so I'm just going to pull it out. It's pretty tight, but it should come out. Alright, so now we're done that, we're going to take this rod and shove it inside our helicopter thing. Doesn't really matter, at this point just make sure it spins freely. Now we're going to take our pulley, and the top with the little nub sticking out, that's the top side, so we're going to slide that on. Now the next part is take this part and get it on here. It's a little tricky because the tolerances are really tight, so I can take this, I'm going to work it in reverse just because it seems easier for me by spinning this back and forward until I get it on. So we're going to take it back out, flip it around, and put it back on. Now we're going to do slide all the way down to the base to make this next part easier. Take your pliers and try to bend a 90-degree angle in the top of this. It's actually not crucial if it's not 90 degrees. I just bent this not even close to 90 degrees. But the next step is I'm going to take the torch, or if you have a lighter at home, a lighter works too. This doesn't need to be red hot. Just a few seconds of that ought to do it. And slide this little red piece up into there, just until you get it inside there just a little bit to lock it. And that's the completed rotor head assembly. The next step is to make sure your rod fits inside of here, but also can pivot freely. If it's a little bit tight, spin the shaft of this around until you kind of loosen up the hole on the inside to make it easier and free-flowing. It needs to be able to pivot freely inside of here, because if you don't have this thing moving freely, the flybar will not work on the helicopter. Alright, for the next step, we're going to take this 063 rod and we're going to cut it down to 1/2 inch. Next step is we're going to take these little rods and push them into this 3D printed part. And And we're going to slide these into the little holes on the side of the top helicopter part. Don't have a name for these things. Grab the pliers and kind of squeeze them, make sure they're in all the way. And the thing here is I'm going to try to center this as much as possible and make sure both of these bars are pressed in. So you should see this kind of gap like there where it floats in the center. Once you've done that, you can take the super glue and put glue on the ends of the bar on the fly bar part. And this is what you should get. It should be able to move kind of freely like that, back and forward. Like so. And now we're done with this step. Also, we're gonna glue the little weights on, so just go ahead and dab a little bit of glue on that. And plop these bad boys on. Alright, one last thing on the fuselage part. We need to put a little bit of drop glue on this wire to keep the pulley from falling out. So I put a pretty good amount of glue because there's gonna be a lot of force on this, so it didn't really matter. So now we're gonna work on the blades. So typically, we're gonna make 2 of these blades. The dimensions are about 9 inches, 0.75 inches on this side, and 1.5 inches on this side. Now I do have the DXS available. You can cut this out on laser or, I don't know, pattern if you want. Not really necessary, just make something about this size and this is good enough. So now you have your blade that looks like this. Now it's important to realize which side we're going to make the airfoil. So this is the front side. It looks kind of like this. With this little arrow here so you can kind of see. So this is the leading edge on this side and this is the trailing edge. Now obviously we're going to make an airfoil shape look something like this into our blade. Doesn't need to be super precise, but however, the better you make this blade, the better this is going to perform. So take your time here to make this airfoil shape. So I'm going to take this, take some sandpaper, and just start kind of working on it. Once you get the sanding done, it should look like this. And pay attention to the airfoil direction of the blade because it's going to be traveling in this direction. Now it's time to make the hole for mounting your blade. This is roughly about like 0.39 of an inch in, and from the leading edge it's about the same. It doesn't really matter if you don't really make this the same where I make it. You just need to make sure that it's the same for both of your blades. So when you finish this blade, make sure you mark it and copy and repeat on the other blade. Now our blade is officially done and ready for warping, which you need to take it to the sink and run under some hot water. So once your blade is thoroughly soaked, it is time to wrap around something round. This is the Cove commuter, which is not sponsoring this video. You can wrap around this and tape it, but I'm going to use this cardboard too because it's a little bit more consistent. So I'm going to press this down and tightly tape it down. Once you've done this, set aside for a few hours and let it dry. Obviously, if you're in a warmer, drier climate, this will dry really quickly, but if you're in a cold, humid climate, it'll take longer. We can move on to making the tail rotor blades now. Alright, for the tail dimensions, it's 3 inches this way and about 0.75 inches down this way. Once again, it doesn't really matter if you copy this design shape precisely, just make it about the same size. Now for setting this, it doesn't really matter if you put an airfoil shape into it. All you really need to do is make the front side kind of rounded and the trailing edge kind of sharp. And you should get something that looks like that. Now you don't need to warp this part, we're just going to glue it straight on, and that's what we're going to do right now. So now we'll grab our piece of piano wire. This is the 0.47 diameter music wire. We're going to go ahead and cut this down to make our tail rotor part. This is about 1 inch. So we're going to need to use these parts. Now if you notice, there are 2 sets here. If you don't have this 0.47 music wire, you can use these larger diameter hole parts and use the same shaft diameter as the main rotor head assembly. However, if you want to go a little bit lighter, use the 0.47. It's a little bit better. So I'm going to go ahead and take this part and shove this in this hole. Once you take this piece, you're going to come on this side, facing you guys, and push this in that way. Then you can take this part and stick it through here like that. And you should basically get that. Now you're going to take your blades and glue them on this way so that it spins this way. Alright, once you're done, it should basically do this. And it's on to the next step. The next thing you need is your elastic thread. String does not work as well for this. You want to find something kind of elastic. This I got off Amazon. However, if you go into the jewelry section of Walmart, you can probably find some kind of elastic strings for making bead bracelets. So this is roughly about 20 inches, 21, you know, unstretched. I'm going to go and cut it there. And you're going to tie the ends off. to make a belt out of this. I usually do this method where you stick it through and pull it. I don't know what this method is called, but y'all should know how to tie this. And you should get that. Now you want to cut the excess off. And this you can go and put on the chopper. And then you should go get that. Pay close attention to which way the band's going. You want to make sure that when this head spins this direction, the blades are pushing air and pulling the tail rotor that way. If you get it around the other way, it's just going to spin faster the opposite direction and make your helicopter not fly good. Now, the next step is going to require the big fat stick. This is cut to about 8 inches. You can really experiment with the length of the fat stick depending on the rubber bands you got. But that's going to get glued to the front like this at a 90-degree angle. Now you can take additional sticks and strengthen this up and just like glue little cross braces like this. You definitely want to put something on here to keep it from collapsing. You can make a solid piece or you can just do basically whatever. The next step is to attach the rubber band. I fold this piece of music wire into this funky little shape like this. Anything really would work, you can do whatever. But I'm going to take this and kind of jam it into the stick. Like so, the bottom. And then I'm going to secure it with some glue. The next step is to make the rubber band motor. I got this kind of like model airplane rubber, like some generic stuff. However, you guys may have a varying experience trying to find that stuff, but anyways, it's going to be 2 loops of this I'm going to put on. If you don't get enough power and your helicopter doesn't fly, just add a few more rubber bands to try to make it stronger. This step is pretty self-explanatory. You just take this and put them there, and then pull this doohickey down, and slip it over there. Now we are basically ready for the last step, attaching the blades. The one last thing we gotta make for our blades is some kind of washer. I have this for sale sign, which is made out of this nice thin plastic. So I'm gonna cut this little donut out of it. Alright, so once you're done with that, you're gonna glue your little donut thing into the hole where the blade is. Obviously this makes it a little bit stronger. And one thing I did kind of forget to mention is you're gonna need an M3 screw. Sorry. I'm pretty sure you can find one of these somewhere. Any sort of screw will work, you just gotta make sure it can kind of thread into this hole on the chopper part. So obviously this goes through there, and this gets threaded into there. And if this is your first time screwing into it, you gotta press kind of hard. You gotta kind of cut the threads with the screw and kind of get it to run its way in there. And this, I do tighten it down so this doesn't move too easily, but it can still move to some degree to keep your blades from breaking when it hits the ground. And the chopper is complete. Oh, one last thing we will do is balance-wise, you can see where it balances right now. It's not the greatest. You want it to balance directly on the rotor part if you want it to kind of take off vertically and land. So I'm going to take a little piece of carbon. You can really use anything you want. This is a piece of carbon fiber with the screw in it, and I'm just going to stick it in the front. And now our helicopter is complete. Oops. If you follow the instructions correctly, you won't have this problem. The problem is I cut my tail boom a little bit too short and then glued this a little bit too close here. So there's a slight miscalculation. Hey, that's the best one yet. Nothing went all around. All right, let's go outside and try it. It's also important to make sure your blades are straight before launch. Other than that, that's really all there is to it, and just let it rip. Oh no, tail rotor failure. Obviously this goes to show winding it, you want to turn it in the reverse direction that it should be flying, so obviously if you look, it goes this way for the winding. This is just 40 winds, and we'll see what it does inside. We should probably go outside, but anyways, that concludes the Rubberband powered helicopter. Like I said, if you run into issues, maybe try adding more rubber bands to get more blade torque. And yeah, Merry Christmas. Have fun building the helicopter. Yeah, it's stuck on the roof. I didn't quite expect that result, but it's up there.